Beatles, they are the Liverpudlians and they belong to us. They belong to the Cavern. And yes, let the rest of the country have them. Let them enjoy them. But please, let them come back to us just at least once. Just to be the same as they used to be. With no changes at all. It would be fantastic.
They played at the Cavern for the last time, and Brian Epstein personally asked for us to be on the same show, and it was great. I mean, we knew the Beatles, and Paul and his brother Mike were brought up, raised about 200 yards from where I lived, and my mum and dad still live in the same area, Allerton.
The very, very last time we played with the Beatles was August the 3rd, 1963. We went down a store and the Beatles went on, and we couldn't wait to see them because we hadn't seen them for a few months. And the power went. All the Beatles gear had gone off. And so the Beatles, being the Beatles, didn't bother them at all. They just, Paul went on the piano, John and George playing their guitars. You could just about hear the guitars because of playing them acoustically, no amplifiers. And Paul played this, what we thought was a musical song, an old musical song. And we thought that for many years. We didn't remember it until I heard it 3 or 4 years later. And it was, when I get older, losing my hair, many years from now. Well, it was, that was the song.
Mal was the big bear. He was our bodyguard. But he was great at it because he would never hurt anyone. He was just big enough to say, excuse me, and let the boys through. But he could lift the bass amp on his own. And that was a miracle. I mean, he should have been in the circus, really.
What's involved in being the road manager of a group like the Beatles?
Road manager, I was basically, did anything for them they needed. I mean, I set up the equipment, tested everything, you know, the security, checked the security. On tours in England, I've ended up 4 o'clock in the morning washing stage shirts and polishing boots because I wanted the group to look their best. You know, I was so proud of the boys that I'd do anything for them.
Brian Epstein has booked them in. I think it was partly because Brian, like Ruth, liked Bournemouth. He used to, in the 50s, come to Bournemouth on holidays with his parents. And it was just, you know, I think it was down to him more than anything. So they're booked into what I would pronounce as the Gaumont Theatre. Okay. It's in the centre of Bournemouth in a road called Westover Road. 2 doors away from it, and geographically this has some relevance soon, was a 4-star hotel called the Palace Court. Fronted hotel, very nice hotel. So the Beatles were staying there for almost a week, 6 days.
And I'm guessing Queenie Epstein and the clan were also staying there on Brian's holidays. So
they did turn up at various points, and so did Cynthia. John Lennon was wont in later years to refer to the Beatles' touring days as being like Fellini's Satyricon. This meant that there were a lot of girls around. But Mark said that week in Bournemouth was a very quiet week for John because most of the week Cynthia was there as well. And Brian was there, and
Queenie.
Also, and in passing, I think Ringo had recently just bought a new car, Ford Zodiac, and he'd driven himself down there that day.
Oh, really?
The time he met, John Lennon, and how his friend Johnny, that's me, come up with this ridiculous idea as a 16-year-old.
And we saw the first show on the first night, and my friend who ran a record store said, we have to go back and meet the Beatles. And I said, right. No, how to meet the Beatles? And he said, well, what's that guitar John Lennon's playing? You know, and I said, well, I think it's a Rickenbacker. I think that's what it's called. And he said, that's it. He said, let's go and see the manager of the Gaumont. So we did. And he said, look, we represent Rickenbacker guitars, and we've come all the way down from London. This is a 16-year-old talking.
Right.
And we'd like to see our client, John Lennon. The manager was so panicked by all the pandemonium going on around that he picked up the phone and he called the police were all around the stage door, and he called the stage door and gave the guy our names and said that, to let us in. So we walked through. They had a police escort. They pushed the crowds away so we could get through to the stage door.
Oh my God.
And these are people who are our age that we knew.
They must have been going, hey, whoa.
Yeah, whoa. And, so we get into the theatre. And, we go and knock on the Beatles stage door, and John Lennon comes out, and he's bored because he was not doing anything between the shows.
Right.
And I say, that Rickenbacker you're playing, I mean, I've never actually played one of those. I'm a guitar player too. And he goes out, and he comes back with a Rickenbacker, and he hands it to me. So I put it up around my neck, and I play a few Chuck Berry refs just to let him know that, like I'm on the level. And, long story short, he says, "What did you think of the show?" And I said, "Well, it's the greatest show rock show I've ever seen in my life." I said, "It's just great." And then I made a mistake. I was sitting right in the middle, right in front of George's amplifier. And amplifiers in those days are one directional, so you hear what's coming out of whatever's in front of you. I said I couldn't really hear you too well because I could only hear George. And I hear bloody George. And the next morning, the newspaper, the Bournemouth Echo, is, I wake up really late because I couldn't sleep. I mean, I just met a Beatle, And, so I look at the review, and it reviews both shows. And it said, first show, Beatles, fantastic, greatest band ever. And then all it said about the second show is in the second show, John Lennon played so loud that we couldn't hear anything else. But then, of course, the next day we went to their hotel, and this time we pretended to be writers for the Bournemouth Echo. And so we got into a press conference with
Perfect.
Wow. And my friend broke George Harrison's pencil getting an.
When I first saw them live on stage, as the gentleman before said, they didn't move around. They only moved to the mic or to the other mic to join each other for vocal harmonies. There was no dance animation, no flashing lights, just a very simple presentation. But when you listen to the energy of Paul McCartney singing Long Tall Sally, opening the concert, you'll catch the feeling that I caught then.
Well, it was in the Grand Hotel, Bournemouth, my first formal session with the Beatles. And I needed a space because George Martin had just rung up Brian Epstein saying, we need a cover for the next album urgently. Brian said, can you do it? Is there something you could do for us? So I said, well, let me think about it. The next day I said, I think I've got the idea. But the only place I could shoot it was in the dining room of the hotel, where we could draw the dark curtains round in the background and use the light of the windows to do the shot, which was the cover of With the Beatles Meet the Beatles. The backdrop wasn't as dark as I wanted, but I managed to print it so it went darker. And that was 2 days after meeting them.
So it was a very simple production. It was me. I put film in the camera. I put the camera on a tripod. I used a telephoto lens for one purpose. That was so that all the heads would be more or less the same size. But I didn't want a line of them because it wouldn't have fitted into the square format of the album. So that since Ringo was the last to join the group and was the smallest, I said, why didn't you go down in the bottom right-hand corner? And Ringo, being a very cooperative sort of guy, I wanted a photograph that where they all had more or less the same expression. It wasn't a smiling pop star album cover. It was black and white or blue and white, where they all have a uniform look, but the difference in character is a difference in their faces. So I felt I wanted to give uniformity to them as a group. They're four square, and but a difference in the look of their faces.
To reach the venue while avoiding fans, they need only climb the hotel's fire escape, walk across the roof, and then take another fire escape down into the Gaumont. John got a bit fed up with doing this, Hughes recalled, so he decides he's going to get a disguise and go out through the front of the hotel and walk to the theater. He managed to get as far as the door to the Gaumont when somebody spotted him. To Hughes's amazement, Mal just picked John up, threw him over his shoulder, and made a quick dash for the back of the stage. It was quite comical. Mal, Ringo, and a few of the Dakotas were invited to attend a party in town. At the party, the group encountered a load of hooray Henrys, well-to-do young people, you know, educated and financially well off. And we're all public school boys. Hughes soon came to realize that all they wanted us there for was to try and belittle us. Not surprisingly, a ruckus ensued, with Mal tossing one of the mouthy youths through a window.
You've had some hits in Sweden, and have you ever thought about coming to Sweden?
Well, we'd like to, you know, but we're so busy at the moment that I don't think we'll get there till sometime next year, if we go at all.
Actually, we want to come, you know, because we've heard about the girls in Sweden. Oh, gorgeous blondes. Yeah, you know.
That's Paul, and he's supposed to be the sweet boy in this family, no?
Oh, shut up.
His dad was a Mars bar.
And George?
Yes.
You would like to come to Sweden?
I'd like to go to Sweden, yes.
And another thing in your stage act, John, is all that sick humor you got, funny hands and...
Well, I thought he was quite healthy.
Yes.
He's not sick, he's just a cripple.
I'm not. I'm quite normal, my Swedish friends. I'm quite normal.
Very often you got the title, you know, me and you and everything like that.
Yeah, well, we try to do that, you know, to make it personal, sort of as though we really mean it.
Yes.
When we sing a thing about, I love you, it's easier.
And don't you forget it, I love you, and don't you forget it.
Well, you see, it's easier than singing something about the cat that lives on the hill, man. You know, it's a lot easier anyway, just to sing about what you feel yourself. Yeah, see, if we write one song, then we can get going then, after that. And get more ideas after having written one song.
Yes.
So we wrote I'll Get You, which is the B-side first. And then She Loves You came after that. You know, we got ideas from that. And there you go.
It sounds very easy, all of it, no?
Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's hard.
Yeah.
We find it difficult sometimes.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ringo. Well, he's singing too. All of you are singing, actually.
Yeah, we all sing.
Yeah.
The singing dogs.
You know me, boys.
We've written a new song for Ringo, which we are going to do on our new LP.
Yes, what about that new LP? When? When will it be?
Well, it's
September, isn't it?
No, it's November.
Okay.
It's going to be released in November. Don't know when it'll get to Sweden, though.
That song changed my life. He Loves You had such an impact on me. Sometimes I hear a song, I go, I remember when I met Susie. It reminded me of when you fell in love or you broke up. Or I remember exactly where I was walking down a road called Whitton Road in Aston. I had a blue transistor radio, and when that song came on, I knew from then on what I wanted to do in my life. I come from a working class background, and it was like we had people like Lonnie Donegan, who was a shuffle guy. It was okay, but this was so brand new and such a great feeling it gave me. And then I became an avid Beatles fan. They were great. You imagine going to bed tonight and waking up tomorrow to a completely exciting, brand new world. When I was a kid, my bedroom wall was full of with the word Beatles. And they were great. I owe my career to them because they gave me the desire to want to be in the music game.
I remember one fellow who bugged George so much to write his own songs, when George wasn't writing too much. And this guy, every time he saw George, he'd say, you know, have you written any songs yet? George'd say, no, not yet, I haven't written anything for you. I'm not a writer. We'd go on his travels, and then we'd meet this guy again, he'd say to George, have you written anything yet? And George was just getting fed up with this guy on his case about writing, so he wrote the song, Don't Bother Me.
I was in Bournemouth about... must have been about 1963. It was after our first success, and we were doing weekly shows in holiday resorts. So we were in Bournemouth, and I was feeling sick. In fact, I was in bed sick, and the doctor was giving me some tonic. And I just thought, oh, I'll see if I can write a song. So I wrote one, and it was an awful song, and it was called Don't Bother Me, which I suppose is how I felt at the time.
Oh, there must be about 300 or so rock and roll groups in Liverpool, and all of them, except us, have either signed up for record companies or with the telly or something like that. You've only got to mention Liverpool and all the fans start screaming and going wild. It's glamour. But I mean, when you weigh it up, it's rather ironic to think that there's 80,000 houses in Liverpool itself, which are really not fit for people to live in. And apart from that, there's about twice as many people on the dole here as anywhere else in the country.
Yes, but it is a good thing, the fact that they are on the dole, insofar as they can spend all day practicing. Whereas, if they had a normal job, they wouldn't be able to do that at all.
Oh, in fact, one chap used to play with us. He was on and off the dole for about 5 years and all. But seriously, there's loads of vitality and talent ready to break out of Liverpool any time at all. They're not fighting, they're singing. And up to a couple of years ago, the police wouldn't let them sing at all in the pubs in case they started a riot.
People seem to be saying there's no Mersey sound, but there definitely is a sound. It's a sound of its own. It's a sound that you don't find anywhere else in the country.
I'd say that the Merseyside sound is a heavy accent on the bass drum and the bass guitar, and that's what gives the music its guts.
Probably the nearest definition is a hard driving beat with a chunk-chunk on the drums. The first thing you hear is the bass, the thump, thump, thump of the bass. It just seems to... It's just absolutely fantastic. It vibrates the whole inside of you. I mean, say, I've been with groups that practice in small places. The bass actually rattles the windows. This is exactly what it does to human being, I think.
They don't sing pretty songs. They sing real songs, real feeling as they turn out. Just pure feeling for this Liverpool noises.
I don't think there is any such thing as a Mersey sound. It's just an illusion that now Liverpool groups have broken through and got records up in the charts. People have just said this sort of thing.
I think it's purely geographical. If they play this sort of music in Timbuktu, they would call it a Timbuktu sound. If they played it in Plymouth, they call it the Plymouth sound.
Well, it's a form of rowdyism, really.
Ringo Starr, drums. A group run by Liverpool businessman Brian Epstein. Epstein was a house furnisher who developed a sideline in gramophone records. He got the Beatles their first record, Love Me Do, in October 1962. Its brisk sale on Merseyside helped to hoist the Beatles into the popularity charts published in the music papers. This was the beginning of a national reputation.
I hadn't had anything to do with pop management of pop artists before that day that I went down to the Cavern Club and heard the Beatles playing. And this was quite a new world, really, for me. I was amazed by this sort of dark, smoky, dank atmosphere, this beat music playing away. And the Beatles were then just four lads on that rather dimly lit stage, somewhat ill-clad, and the presentation was, well, left a little to be desired as far as I was concerned, because I've been interested in the theatre and acting for a long time. But amongst all that, something tremendous came over, and I was immediately struck by their music, their beat, and their sense of humour, actually, on stage. And even afterwards, when I met them, I was struck again by their personal charm. And it was there that really it all started. It took about 8 months to get to the stage where we had a recording contract and we were having the first record issued. And from there to the present, well, where their last record sold 500,000 copies within 10 days of issue. Actually, their first record did very well. It sold 100,000 copies. That was Love Me Do.
The best thing was it came to the charts in 2 days. And everybody thought it was a fiddle because our managers' stores send in these, record things? Returns. And everybody down south thought, he's buying them himself or he's just fiddling the charts, But he wasn't.
Actually, we've been at it a long time before that. We've been to Hamburg. I think that's where we found our style. We developed our style because of this fellow there. He used to say, you've got to make a show for the people. And he used to come up every night shouting, Mac Show. So we used to Mac Show, and John used to dance around like a gorilla, and we'd all, knock our heads together and things like that. Anyway, we got back to Liverpool, and all the groups there were doing this sort of shadows type of stuff. And we came back, leather jackets and jeans and funny hair, macking show, which went down quite well.
We just bought leather jackets, not for the group. One person bought one, I can't remember, and then we all liked them, so it ended up we were all on stage with them. And we'd always worn jeans because we didn't have anything else at the time, And then we went back to Liverpool and got quite a few bookings, they all thought we were German. We were builders from Hamburg, and they all said, you speak good English, things like that. So we went back to Germany, and we had a bit more money the second time. So we bought leather pants, and we looked like 4 Gene Vincents, only a bit younger, I think. And that was it, and we just kept the leather gear, till Brian came along.
It was a bit sort of old hat anyway, all wearing leather gear. And we decided we didn't want to look sort of ridiculous, just going on, because more often than not, too many people would laugh. It was just stupid. We didn't want to sort of appear as a gang of idiots. And Brian suggested that we just sort of wore ordinary suits. So we just got what we thought were quite good suits and just got rid of the leather gear. That was all.
And your idea was pinched anyway.
Oh yeah, I had my pants pinched anyway.
We didn't laugh at them in Liverpool.
We do like the fans and enjoy reading the publicity about us, but from time to time you don't realise that it's actually about yourself. You see your pictures and read articles about, you know, George Harrison, Ringo Starr, Paul and John, but you don't actually think, oh, that's me that I am in the paper. It's funny, it's just as though it's a different person.
When we go home, you know, we go in early in the morning when we finish the job, and the kids, you know, they don't know you at home. But if they find out, well, where I live, they get the drums out, you know, and beat it out, because it's a play street, and, you know, there's no traffic or nothing bothering them. And once, when the boys came for me, they popped in to see me mum and my dad, you know, we had to go out the back because, you know, there's 20 or 30 outside. And they wouldn't believe me, mother, you know, they'd knock in saying, can we have their autographs? So it built up, you know, so much. There was about 200 kids all around the door, and they was peeping through the window and knocking, you know. And in the end, my mother was ill, you know, she was terrified out of her life, just all these kids and boys and girls and that, you know.
They send us a lot of jelly babies and chocolates and things like that, because somebody wrote in one of the papers about presents and things that we'd had given to us, and John said he got some jelly babies, and I ate them. But ever since that, we've been inundated. We had about 2 ton a night. But the main trouble is they tend to throw them at us when we're on stage. And once I got one in my eye, which wasn't very nice. In fact, I've never been the same since.
It all sounds complaining, but, you know, we're not. We're just putting the point is that, you know, it affects your home more than it does yourself, you know, because you know what to expect. But your parents and your family, you know, they don't know what's happening.
Have you any broken drumsticks? Please, please, please will you send us one each? We think your hair is foul. We got home from Waltherstone at 3:30. My dad nearly killed me, but I'd do it a million times over to see you. I'm coming to see you on Monday night. I'll clap very loud so that you'll know who I am.
Is it possible to get a picture of you? 2 foot by 4 foot to fit on my bedroom wall.
I have entered a competition in boyfriend comic to win a date with one of you, but I don't suppose I'll win.
BBC producer Jim Casey.
No, well, it isn't really all that funny because, I mean, these kids are the people who decide. They're the ones who make stars or break them. I mean, if 1,000 kids scream, this is fab. And if nobody screams, it's terrible, it's rotten. And that's it. Of course, everybody is asking in the business, how long can these groups go on, this Mersey beat? Nobody knows, but one thing is that the record companies have got to keep on finding new gimmicks, new things to sell. Some of these 20 million pounds worth of records that are sold every year. And teenagers, as they get to be 17 or whatever the age is, they want new idols. And groups, the other thing is that groups, it seems to me difficult for them to carry on, unlike individuals, Tommy Steele and Cliff Richards, they can become entertainers, actors, dancers, singers. What a group can do, I don't know. Their future seems much more shaky.
Will demand that you think, how long are you going to last? Well, you can't say, you know. You can be big-headed and say, yeah, we're going to last 10 years. But as soon as you've said that, you think, you know, we're lucky if we last 3 months, you know.
Well, obviously we can't keep playing the same sort of music until we're about 40, because when we're sort of old men playing From Me to You, nobody's going to want to know that it's all about that sort of thing. So, you know, we've thought about it, and probably the thing that John and I will do will be write songs as we have been doing as a sort of sideline now. We'll probably develop that a bit more, we hope. Who knows, at 40 we may not know how to write songs anymore.
I hope to have enough money to go into a business of my own by the time we do flop. And, I mean, we don't know, it may be next week, it may be 2 or 3 years, but I think we'll be in the business either up there or down there for at least another 4 years.
I've always fancied having a lady's hairdressing
sell them, you know, a string of them, in fact, and trot round in my stripes and my tails, you know, like a cup of tea, madam.